Almost 10 years ago, Kerbal Space Program 1 released into early access of Steam. And what an amazing game it was, because I think it was very unique at that time. And it's a simulation game that kind of teaches you how space travel in reality actually works. So it's simplified compared to reality, but still the basic foundations in the game I think are pretty accurate. And you get an understanding of what space programs like NASA or other space organizations, what they actually do and what challenges they have to bring rockets and objects into space and to other astronomical bodies like planets, moons, asteroids or whatever. And that is really fascinating, and as said, you can learn quite a lot from this, which is very enjoyable. In of itself, it's often like a puzzle game and very iterative. You build a rocket and have to find out, how do I get to, let's say, the moon or something. And slowly you progress and learn more and more information and refine your build and your approach. And then at some point you make it and then have solved this little puzzle how to get, for example, to the moon. And that is, at least to me, always very fun. Though originally the game also had like no tutorials, and you had to watch, for example, Scott Manley's tutorial videos on YouTube, shoutouts to him, to actually learn how space travel works and what you need to do in the game. And that though was still very fun in the day. You did not know everything and you had to figure out a lot of things yourself, and that was a lot of fun. Now a few days ago, Kerbal Space Program 2 released, and the reception was, let's say, kind of mixed. And I can already spoil this. Also, my opinion on the game in this first impressions video won't reveal too much new things, I think. I would say it's pretty similar to what most people saying currently over the game. But yeah, we come to that in a moment. My name is Chris, aka The Philosopher's Games, or TPhGames as my little games channel here is called, and today we look, as said, into the release early access version of Kerbal Space Program 2. And if you have seen other reviews, I can already spoil, I guess my opinion won't be that different compared to others, but maybe I can provide some interesting insights into the game or not. We will find out about that in a moment. But let us just start. Let us start by looking into the options menu. And if you are not interested in that, maybe skip a bit ahead. Maybe also show like your timecode or so. I also want to hint, I show you, like usually I don't record it. But in this case, it might be interesting for some people. So I will show you the FPS counter of Steam. Kerbal Space Program has one as well, but it's a bit busy, so I take that one. Typical for early access, and early access means the game is still in development and you're basically buying into a very early beta version of the game. And it will be developed over time and get better, hopefully. In some cases that works pretty well, in some cases not so much, but in Kerbal Space Program 1's case it worked quite well, and we got a more and more polished and better product over time, though even at the end it still had some issues. But in Kerbal Space Program 2 we of course have the perspective of the first game and other early access games, and the game also costs €50, or I assume $50, which is a very steep entry into the game. So in this regard, this is definitely something we have to keep in mind. But let us look into the menu. Typical for early access is, for Kerbal Space Program early access anyway, is that we have some, let's call them cheat options basically. So you can deactivate God mode for your vessel, like no crash damage, unbreakable joints. You can also activate infinite propellant, so fuel and electricity and so on. So this can be helpful if you want to test something out, test the limits or so, or if just simply a stupid bug in the game that might frustrate you quite a bit. And you can turn this off and on the fly while you play in this menu here. You don't have to restart the game or anything for that, or go to the main menu. It's possible every time, so that's kind of neat. I didn't look into the German translation, but here on the first page we already see little, I wouldn't call it a mistake, but a word was, I don't know, this translation seems strange. This should be unendlich Treibstoff should be written here. It's just maximum. I don't know why it is, but so I can't tell you about the quality of the translation, but since I'm a native German speaker, I can at least hint at that maybe some translations need also a little bit of work here and there. But you can at least change multiple languages, and we have English, Italian, French, German, Spanish, Japanese, Korean, Polish, Russian, Chinese, Portuguese, or Chinese simplified and Chinese traditional. So quite a few languages, which is great, I think. And I think we just go to the next menu here. As said, there's an FPS counter in the game. It's a bit busy and small on 4K resolution. We talk about that in a moment. You can just reduce the maximum amount of persistent debris, maybe to not clutter your UI too much, or I don't know, potentially it also has a performance impact. I'm not sure. Just let it where it is. Skip the launch sequence. Like now we have a launch sequence with a countdown in the Kerbal fantasy language, and I assume it is. And you can just turn this off, but you can also skip it every time by pressing, for example, space or click on the go button one time. Again, you just skip the countdown. It's possible, but you can just turn it off in general. Input options, you can change those. There are no secondary options. Maybe this here might be a secondary option for the button. Not all the buttons seem to have secondary options though. Maybe they add this later, but some it seems have, most have not. Would be nice to see, but it's at least so far I tried some buttons, it works. Haven't checked out this here. So what happens if I press this, A and D? Okay, you just do both. It seems to work. So we just reset the input stuff so I don't mess anything up. Here in the audio option, you can mute certain parts. So if you unmute it, it sets it back to 100. There's that. You have all audio sliders for all kinds of things that I appreciate quite a bit. Then a thing I really like is the tap away audio. I think all games should have this option, because for me, who streams at times or records stuff for YouTube, it's very nice that when I tap out that the music continues. Because it might be strange for the viewer, why is suddenly the music stopping going on and off all the time? Because I just tapped out and do something in OBS. For, like, if I just would activate it, tap out, music just stops when I tap out, now it's back. So I appreciate this feature quite a bit. For some people it might be the other way around, and they like when they tap out, the game should shut up. I can understand that. For me it's the other way around, so it's good to have this option. That's basically the point here. Here we have temperature gauges. The game has no temperature system, so in Kerbal Space Program 1 it was also added at some point, was not there from the beginning, though there was at least a particle effect for high temperature, for example, re-entry into the atmosphere. Here that is missing, and then in Kerbal Space Program 1 you had like a little gauge that filled, and when it was full the part of your vessel would just melt or explode and just you would lose control or something. This is not in the game yet. I activate it, nothing happens, because there is simply no temperature or heat system in the game yet. You can, accessibility, there's no colorblind stuff it seems, but you can at least change subtitle text size, which is great I think. But yeah, probably they will add more to it. So far I have to say the options menu looks pretty decent. Here we have the graphic options. Nothing too unusual I would say, though I would argue most of this has very little impact on your performance. The game is poorly optimized and will run at very low frame rates no matter what you do here, I think. So that's unfortunate. We try for the time being at recording at 4K, and I can always spoil this 60 FPS. You won't see them often. So we might later reduce to 1080p and just scale it up to 4K, because I have a RTX 3080 and a Ryzen 9 7950X, so 16 cores and so on. I have a pretty decent system, and I can't hit 60 FPS many times at 1080p. That tells you roundabout what you can expect if you have like a less powerful machine. The game will run absolutely terrible, I guess, on most machines. There are a lot of complaints about performance, and I hope they upgrade this soon, because that is really, really annoying. And even Cyberpunk runs pretty decent on my machine at 4K, at least without ray tracing. The point is, I have a pretty decent system, and if we look at Steam charts, what most people are running, this most likely will run much worse on their system, and that is hard to believe because it runs already terrible on my machine. But yeah, technical issues in the game are unfortunately very common. And also, one thing that is very common in this game are bugs and little problems you can have here and there. And that is insanely frustrating, I have to admit, and kills a bit the fun. First of all, there's not that much game mode content, I would call it. Like, you only have sandbox. That means you have all the parts, there's no career, no progression. You just have to say, okay, I want to fly to the moon or whatever. And then you start your mission, build your ship, plan it, fly it, land there, come back. But you don't get anything from there. You can't do mining, you can't yet set up space bases. I guess in theory you could to some degree. But it's very limited and needs a bit of role-playing almost by the player. That's very unfortunate, though I have to admit that the first Kerbal Space Program also released with just like the sandbox mode in early access for quite some time, until science was added. That means you bring like a laboratory into space or some experiments, then you get science points, and those you can turn in for new spaceship parts or whatever, or new technology basically. And you have a sort of progression through this. And then later they added a fully fleshed out career mode and so on. Took some time, and this will come to the game as well in future updates. There's a roadmap, but even these basic things are not in the game yet. I will load a different campaign, but just to stay here for a moment, difficulty you can change. You can also activate the cheat stuff. As said, you can deactivate in the menu. Here you have all kinds of interesting options. You can name it. What I like is the color stuff they do. You can change this in the game here as well, so it's not set it here and then it's set in stone until the end of time. But you can say I want to have this as my colors, and your ship will be white and blue or white and black or whatever. I don't know what color you like. To show you some stuff from the game, I would argue I load a save game that I prepared, instead of just starting completely fresh, so we can skip through a few things here and there. Yeah, I can show you also some bugs really frequently. So as you can see, the Kerbal Space Program area, maybe I can show you some footage from the first game here. Again, it looks much bigger. It has now multiple launch pads to one race and so on. We have even a little naval thing where you can spawn stuff. Probably not in the game yet. I think there's no buoyancy system in the game yet for ship stuff and so on. Might come into the game later. As I said, there's not even a system for heating up your ship during re-entry into the atmosphere. Very basic. The system, like I said, the game has a problem that Kerbal Space Program 1 exists. Like, if you zoom out, you see, oh, that's the same system from Kerbal Space Program 1. And there is the idea of the developers later in the roadmap to add other systems where you can travel to with very advanced technology that you can maybe unlock, or in Sandbox you would have it from the start anyway. And that would be very interesting, especially to those people who have only played the normal Kerbal Space Program and have done all of this here already. Now, that is, my opinion, a bit unfortunate, because if that is the case, then this game has really very, very, very little to offer, unfortunately. Because you can just do the same missions you then have done Kerbal Space Program here again, and they work, or you can solve them in a very similar fashion. So there's not much difference. So the only reason to play this is like, it looks a bit nicer. You have now trees here, which have no hitbox, interestingly. Maybe I can show you a bit of this. And you have some tutorials, which we maybe also talk about. You can load them. They are narrated this time, and I have to admit the release Kerbal Space Program 1 had no tutorials, or I think at least no good ones. In this case, you have like little animations that explain you stuff. They are narrated and so on. Here you hear the narrator. I think she voiced some character in a Destiny expansion. It's pretty nice that it's in the game, here at release, because maybe for new people this might be interesting. It's probably one of the most positive things I have to say so far about this game. Of course, it's fun. You can spend 100 or 200 or more than that hours just flying everywhere and planning your own missions and doing sandbox mode and enjoying your time. But like I said, if you want more than that, the game has very little to offer. And as said, keep in mind this is €50 or $50, I think. It's very expensive. Maybe we can fly around here a little bit. You can now click, for example, on this thing here and click on launch and then load the vehicle into it. I haven't shown you, maybe it would be smarter to go to the vehicle assembly first, and I can show you also some new features. If we would, for example, load in our little jet that we have just seen a moment ago, you see the wings look pretty cool, I have to admit. And there's like a system. If you click on this wrench here, you can change the span. Instead of having like 20 different wing types in the game, you now only have like one, and you can make all kinds of weird forms with this, which is I have to admit, this feature I really like. I think that's a pretty cool idea to make this work. In addition, everything else is basically similar to the other program. Like there's the offset thing here to, if you, for example, want to push, let's say, these lights here a bit further out or into the vessel, that works the same. If you deactivate the snapping, you can also do it without having like little snap points where you can just do it completely free now. Not completely, there's a limit, but it's a really generous limit, I have to admit. So this works. And then you can also change colors of things. That is pretty cool. Like for the whole vehicle, if I now click on this, vehicle looks like that. You can save it here. We override it. But you could also say, I want to have blue wings with red, I don't know what. And then I could just say, click on part and say, yeah, I want that the wings look like this. Or I don't know, like this. Or like this. Like, it's pretty neat that this is possible, I have to admit. But yeah, as I said, you can also change it back. That's a pretty cool feature. It works also, of course, on rockets. And I like it quite a bit. Of course, this vehicle here is not probably the best designed thing ever, but at least it looks somewhat decent. And we can maybe start really quick and see what's going on. There's another one we haven't removed yet from the field, but yeah, let's hope we can get up here. We can. Oh, that was close. Yeah, and here you see the trees and so on. That's basically how it looks. And you see the frame rate. We have like 26 FPS. What you could try to do is, or what I could try to do is reducing the resolution a little bit. That stabilizes the frame rate a bit, but yeah, it's not helping too much, I have to admit. And these trees also have no collision, so kind of interesting to see. Well, we haven't really seen it. Let me just try to avoid not to fly too fast here. And there are some visual glitches, for example, like I call it the stealth mode, but if we go to these mountains over there and get a certain height close to the vehicle, the thing here starts to get a bit transparent. It's kind of interesting. Maybe I should reduce the resolution for maybe some extra frames. You will see it won't make that much of a difference, I have to admit. Not sure if I can reproduce. Here it is. There you see it. And we will crash. But yeah, you have seen it. We had like a weird little effect on the plane. It doesn't matter too much. We just say revert to launch. Or we can just get rid of our vehicle here. And maybe I show you a space mission. like a little bit how that looks. There's some improvements there as well. Hope we don't have bugs here. I had a bug where I couldn't load vehicles in anymore when I did this in the past. There's some workarounds around this, but it's kind of annoying. Like some of the bugs in the game are unfortunately not only a little bit annoying, but very annoying. Here we have at least 60 FPS, which is good. Let's load like my distantly sophisticated rocket that we have and maybe start a launch. And I can potentially show you a little bug that this can have. And yeah, if I now hit space, you will hear a countdown, which we can skip. And then the rocket will start. You can also look through the ground, which is kind of neat, but probably also considered a little bug. Let's maybe press the start button. Here, now you hear the countdown. We just skip it though. If you press space again and it starts. You see smoke's coming out, volumetric fog. Looks pretty cool. I think it's volumetric. And yeah, it tanks the frame rate quite a bit though. So even 18 FPS is, in my opinion, not great. Probably I don't know what to say. That's not good for a release version if it runs this terrible, even for an early access game. We have seen other early access games doing it better. That you have to always keep in mind. Put it over and do your classical stuff. Like, it looks cool, I have to admit. You see there were a lot of details at the starting area, like at the launch pad. But like I said, beyond that, the game has not that much to offer, which is very unfortunate, in my opinion. I don't expect that the game has everything, at least when it has so little, in my opinion, that needs to be kind of work, at least decently. And currently it seems like everything works perfectly fine. But I can already spoil that might not be the case. Let's hope we don't hit anything. And here we are. So this is basically how this stuff looks. This looks pretty cool, I have to admit. And now we could do like a little moon mission. So let me just load up a save so I can maybe show to you. When you get sometimes, like here, we were going to moon with what is left over of our vessel here. Very short, and here you see the moon in this little save game I prepared. And here everything seems to kind of work. Maybe it won't work because it's the, what do you call it, like, I don't know. In German we have the word Vorführeffekt, which means so if you do a presentation, something just goes wrong and not what you expect. But yeah, we have it. It's consistent. You see, when I saved, my vehicle wasn't spinning. Now, for whatever reason, it's spinning like crazy. If you want to know why, I have no idea. It's just a hiccup in the physics engine. Sometimes you, for example, screw up your landing. Just say, okay, luckily I made a quick save. I'm not a good pilot. I'm really not a good pilot. And then you just want to load again. That is the features in the game, you want to use it, and then start spinning like this. And just now I'm relatively far away from the moon, so it doesn't happen. So I have maybe time to counteract this weird spinning, but it can like happen. It can also happen if I put out the landing gear here. Currently it doesn't do it, but I had the time, I put it out, and this thing, my ship starts spinning crazily again, which is very unfortunate. Speaking of, I need to really slow down. I'm not sure if we can even make it still, because I just was dreaming here a little bit. No, I was a bit too late here with my explanation. 400 is a bit too fast and we just crash. But yeah, just to give you an idea why it's frustrating, it's because of little bugs like this. And just imagine you have a very complex mission and have to do this every time you save. And I could maybe try to stop the spinning and save again and see if it happens again. But I promise you, when I created the save game, I was not spinning like this. This is like a bug, unfortunately. And you have to spend a lot of resource, like monopropellant, for just introducing the spinning again. Maybe let's do another save and do a quick load. Let me see if it spins again. No, it doesn't. Okay, good. So I don't know what causes it. I have not found the exact root of it, but it is in the game. It's not to showcase any bugs in the game. The point is more, it is annoying that something like this can really kill you the fun if basic stuff like this isn't working. As said, the game is very bare bones when it comes to what it has to offer right now. And if these few systems that you have are not working properly, then it can kill the fun and become frustrating. And that is the reason why I can't really recommend the game in its current state. It has a potential and you definitely should look out for it. But currently, in my opinion, it's just too problematic, to say the least, to just say no, it's perfectly fine. Like I said, there is no real reason for I screwed up. Now I screwed up even more because I was dreaming. There's no real reason in the game why you would try to basically get this at this point. It makes very little sense. And the biggest problem of this game is that Kerbal Space Program 1 exists and is still a very good game, and it's functional, and the gameplay loop is the exact same, unfortunately. There's really not really new content in this here that would make this interesting. There's nothing you can currently do in Kerbal Space Program 2 you couldn't do in Kerbal Space Program 1. Actually, in Kerbal Space Program 1 you can do more things than in this game yet, because there's science, there's a career mode, there's some parts in that game that are not here yet, and so on and so forth. Like you can create a mining base on Moon or something like that. All these options definitely exist. Just so unfortunate that they released it in this early state. And I would be totally fine if it would be like 20 euros or so, or maybe even 30. But 50? It's even more expensive than the original game, which is currently the better product. And that, I don't know what justifies this price tag currently. Like, you could say, it's early access, Chris. You shouldn't mind too much that of course it's not done yet and it has problems. What did you expect? But the moment you sell something in a store, in my opinion, even if it's early access and you have been warned, then things become a bit, I wouldn't say complicated, but they definitely become a little bit different, in my opinion, like in how you see it. And there are other early access games out there that do a phenomenal job, and they're also not done yet, but they simply work better. And that is a thing you definitely should consider when you think about maybe getting this game here. Also, this landing here is absolute terrible. Can already spoil that for you. I was a bit too busy killing my forward velocity here. As I said, I'm a bad pilot. Like, all Kerbal fans will say, oh god, what's he doing there? Now I messed up the killing my thing again. I think we made it. I think we made it. So at least we made it to Moon and landed safely. Then you can get out and just jump away and land here on the surface and plant your little flag here. Look how happy he is. That's pretty cute. And I also like that you can see the Kerbal inside the capsule up there. Getting up there will probably take a moment. It is definitely a cool little addition. Like, the game has potential, in my opinion, if they just manage to fix everything. Now, we also run at 60 FPS, by the way, on the Moon surface. If I would go now up to 4K resolution, it struggles a bit hitting the 60, I guess, but we definitely reach an amount of frames like 40. That's not great either. Consider, look, there's nothing literally here. Like, what is tanking the frame rate so much? That's just very fascinating to me that this is the case. Like I said, even on Moon with nothing around, the frame rate tanks very hard for no apparent reason. If we go a bit lower, we can hit at least 60 at times. Probably takes a moment to get back in. So now we have to also get up here again. Made this, in my opinion, very difficult to navigate to get in. Also, you see the rocket is moving around, which is also a bit frustrating. And you see this little thing here popping up. I can only grab. Now I can board. Finally. And yeah, we made it. Now we could try flying back home. Probably I don't have enough Delta V left because I flew terrible, but at least kind of works. As said, you can see the little Kerbal here inside the thing. I hope you can. Now we can look into it. See, there's a little Kerbal. I like this detail. There's a little window here at the side where you can see him. And yeah, like I said, visually they upgraded this quite a bit. But as said, it's just not a very finished product right now, and you can definitely have a much better time with Kerbal Space Program, with Kerbal Space Program 1, which I would recommend getting for now, and just check at times how the updates were going, how the reception is. Maybe I make some updates on this if it gets better. Probably not. I won't cover every update, but if it gets into a state where I say, yeah, now you can get this over Kerbal Space Program 1 and it's an alternative, I will probably make another short video as a little reminder and see what has improved in the meantime, an update video or so in the future. But yeah, this is enough rambling already from my side. And this is basically also my conclusion on the game. It has potential. I like some of the changes they are doing. If we go to the tracking station again, if they add other star systems to this where you can travel to, then it might also become very interesting for those who have already played quite a bit of Kerbal Space Program 1, because this was only possible with mods, and you could do it there as well at least, but as said, it was not an official mission to do. But I think next on the roadmap is the career mode and science and stuff like this first before it gets to interstellar travel. And I mean, there's also another factor. They want to add like multiplayer that you can play co-op with friends or so. I would say if this would, like if multiplayer would already be in the game and would run stable, I would say yeah. Multiplayer is very difficult. There is also a mod for that in Kerbal Space Program 1, but at least when I tried it with friends, it always had some problems. This would be like an argument for the sell here of this game, but unfortunately it's also not in the game. Like I said, it's a very downgraded version of what Kerbal Space Program has to offer in its current state, of Kerbal Space Program 1 that is, and as such, it is not fully worth it, at least for $50 or euros. That's just, I wouldn't call it an audacity to charge this much, but I think the price policy makes not that much sense right now. Like a lot of programs start with the product a bit cheaper and then gradually increase the price when it's more feature complete. And I don't understand, like, is this the same plan? Do they want to sell it at 70 or something when it comes out? I have no idea. That would seem very expensive, I have to admit. And other games, like currently I like playing a lot of Satisfactory. It's quite some time, I think, already in early access, much longer, but it's a fantastic game. I can recommend that completely, even in early access. It's a lot of fun. You can play it with friends. It has a lot of features. You know, some features and content is still missing, but you can still get hundreds of, maybe even thousands of hours out of that game. And it runs much better, looks much better, and there's a lot more stuff going on, at least visually on the screen, with all the conveyor belts and factories, whatever you build there. It is a very good example for, my opinion, for how early access can look. Soon also Baldur's Gate 3 will come out, and there you can also get into early access, play the first act, and have a good time with that as well. So I would definitely recommend, if you get this, don't play it 4K, play it 1080p. That is my recommendation, except you may be running a 1490, and even this monster will even run Kerbal Space Program 2 on 60 FPS or more. Definitely possible. Also note that I limit my computer to 60 FPS just for recording's sake and stuff like that. The game is not kept at 60 in case people wonder. You can run it at more FPS than that if your machine is able to put those out. But yeah, so that is basically it for my little review here. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope I could give you like a decent overview of what is in the game, what might come in the future. And as said, unfortunately, I can't recommend it in its current state. Just wait the news and check. But I can definitely imagine that this game will get better and actually be a very decent successor to Kerbal Space Program 1 that might introduce very cool, interesting ideas and mechanics and other missions that are possible now. Traveling to other star systems sounds very interesting to me, because I've never done this in KSP1, never tried all those mods, and yeah, it will be interesting to see and play. So if that is the case, by the way, that we have like a very decent experience, I might play it on my Twitch channel a bit, and we maybe play through the career mode or so and do some stuff there, depending on how the reception here is. So maybe check my Twitch. Again, people, thank you for watching, and see you next time. Goodbye.